This channel is still at the beginning of its journey. The stories we share are more than fiction. They're echoes of something deeper. If you'd like to help us grow, feel free to share your thoughts or ideas in the comments. Every voice lights our path. Thank you for being part of Dustbound Tales. It began with a bell. Not a loud, commanding chime, but a soft, melancholic ring that echoed through the empty hills of Marrowood. The sound came each night precisely at 3:13 a.m., drifting from the direction of St. Aveline's church. But St. Aveline's had been abandoned for over 70 years. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, saying the bell was cursed, or worse, an omen. Few dared to visit the crumbling church, its steeple cracked, its door sealed by rust and ivy. No one had stepped inside since the last priest vanished during a storm that ravaged the countryside. Eleanor Gray, a skeptical folklore researcher from the city, arrived in Marrowood in late autumn. The leaves were already dead, the skies a permanent shade of pewter. She was drawn not by belief, but by the need to disprove the impossible. Her blog, Rooted in Truth, had debunked dozens of ghost stories. She thought this one would be no different. Her first night at the inn was quiet, almost too quiet. The air felt thicker, clocks ticked louder, even the fire in the hearth seemed reluctant to crackle. Then the bell rang, distant, hollow, time to the second, 3:13 a.m. Her hands trembled without knowing why. The next day, Eleanor ventured toward the church. Fog blanketed the path like a warning, and the bare trees stood like mourners. She passed an old milestone etched with runes, none of which she could decipher. The bell tower loomed in the distance like a jagged tooth. It was colder near the grounds, unnaturally so. Inside the church, she found a sanctuary abandoned in mid-breath. Rotten pews sagged under the weight of time. Stained glass windows depicted saints whose faces had faded. The altar was covered in dust, except for the center, which was clean, as though recently touched. The bell rope was severed, frayed at the ends. It should have been impossible for the bell to ring. That night, she set up audio equipment, microphones, frequency analyzers, EMF detectors. She waited. The bell rang again, louder, closer. The recordings revealed a disturbing truth. The chime contained anomalies, frequencies outside human range. When slowed down, the waveform resembled a voice, repeating something indistinct. A return, a return. Sleep came in fragments. Eleanor began to lose track of time. Shadows seemed to linger longer. Whispers crept behind walls. Her reflection delayed in mirrors. Still, she returned to the church, driven by a compulsion she couldn't name. One night, she climbed the spiral steps to the bell tower. Each step groaned underfoot. At the top, she found a journal, leather-bound, half-burned, the ink smudged by tears or rain. The entries grew increasingly erratic. It rings whether heard or not. It is not sound. It is memory made flesh. I rang it once. Now I can never leave. The final page was blank except for a handprint, fresh, cold to the touch. That night, Eleanor stayed in the church. At 3:13 a.m., the bell rang again. She did not flinch. She followed the sound beyond the altar, through a hidden passage behind the organ. The path descended deep underground. Beneath the church lay a chamber, circular and lit by phosphorescent moss. In the center stood the bell, not suspended, but resting on stone, glowing faintly. It pulsed like a heartbeat. She reached out and touched it, She saw everything, the lives of those before her, the origins of the bell, the priest's fate. The church was not abandoned. It was a seal. The bell, a tether. The sound, a lure for listeners sensitive to time's fractures. Eleanor never left. Some say you can still hear her voice among the echoes layered beneath the bell. Locals speak of footsteps outside their homes, of whispers that start when the bell rings, always at 3:13 a.m. Now the bell doesn't just ring, it listens, and it waits. Eleanor's disappearance became the town's latest cautionary tale, yet her name was never spoken aloud. The innkeeper removed her name from the ledger. The church road, once marked on local maps, slowly faded as if the forest itself reclaimed it. Her room remained locked, its window always fogged from the inside. Years passed, and newcomers to Marrowood would sometimes speak of dreams. Dreams filled with chimes and shadows that whispered in forgotten tongues. One child visiting for the harvest fair drew a picture of a woman ringing a bell underground. She had no memory of doing so. In a university archive hundreds of miles away, an intern cataloging old folklore submissions came across Eleanor's blog. Her last unpublished draft was titled, "What Calls Beneath." It ended mid-sentence. The bell's sound cannot be recorded now. Devices fail, signals warp. It rings not through air, but through memory, through blood. It waits for the next listener. And when it finds them, it will ring not once, but forever.